Sophie was a young girl who loved traveling. She was brave, but also innocent in her heart. One night, she had to go to another city for an urgent reason. The only road that connected her town to the other side was called the Death Road. Everyone in the village had warned her not to take that road at night. People said that whoever traveled there after dark never returned alive. But Sophie had no other option. She packed her small bag, carried her car keys, and whispered to herself, "I will be fine. Nothing will happen." The night was cold, and the wind was blowing through the trees when Sophie started her car. The clock on the dashboard showed 11:45 p.m. Her parents had told her stories about strange accidents and deaths on this road, but she tried to ignore them. She believed maybe all those were just old legends made to scare travelers. The road was narrow and silent. There were no streetlights, and the darkness seemed endless. Sophie turned on the headlights, but they only showed a small patch of the road ahead. The rest of the world was covered in blackness. Her heart beat faster as she drove deeper into the unknown path. Suddenly, she felt the road was different. It seemed longer than usual. The trees leaned toward her car as if they were alive, watching her every move. She tried to play music on the radio to calm herself, but only static noise came out. Her phone showed no signal, leaving her completely alone in the middle of nowhere. Even though fear slowly crawled into her mind, Sophie told herself she must keep going. She prayed silently, held the steering wheel tighter, and continued her dangerous journey into the night. Sophie kept driving carefully through the endless road. The silence around her was so heavy that even the sound of her car engine felt too loud. After a few minutes, she noticed something unusual. The road signs on the side were broken, twisted, and covered with rust. One of them pointed in the wrong direction, another had deep scratches on it as if someone or something had clawed at it. Her heart sank a little, but she forced herself to stay calm. Maybe it's just an old road. Nothing more, she whispered, trying to encourage herself. But her eyes could not stop staring at those strange signs. Then her car headlights started to flicker. For a few seconds, the road went completely dark and Sophie gripped the steering wheel tightly. When the lights came back, she saw shadows moving among the trees. They were tall, thin, and fast, but whenever she focused, nothing was there. Sophie reached for her phone, hoping to call someone, but the screen only showed no signal. The emptiness of being cut off from the world made her chest tighten. She was truly alone on the death road. The road became narrower, and the trees bent closer, almost forming a tunnel of branches. The cold wind whistled through the leaves, sounding like whispers in the dark. Sophie turned off the radio because the static noise had turned into strange, low voices. It felt like the voices were trying to say her name. Fear crawled deeper into her heart. She pressed the accelerator a little harder, wanting to escape this part of the road quickly. But no matter how far she drove, the same broken signs kept appearing again and again, as if she was stuck in a loop. Her mind began to question reality. Was she really moving forward, or trapped in a nightmare that had no end? The road was getting darker and colder with every passing minute. Sophie tried to stay calm, but her hands on the steering wheel were shaking. The silence around her was broken only by the humming of the engine and the occasional cry of an owl deep in the forest. She kept her eyes fixed on the road, hoping she would soon see a sign of the city. But then something strange happened. She began to hear footsteps. At first, she thought it was just her imagination. How could footsteps be heard when she was driving at nearly 60 miles per hour? She lowered the window a little, and the sound became clearer. Someone was running alongside her car. Her heart pounded wildly. She looked into the rearview mirror and froze. In the faint glow of her flickering headlights, she saw a tall, dark figure running behind her car. Its movements were unnatural, almost too fast for a human. The shadow seemed to glide on the road, its legs moving in jerky, twisted motions, but it never slowed down. Sophie gasped and pressed the accelerator harder. Her car sped forward, but the figure remained in the mirror, matching her speed effortlessly. Its head tilted slightly, as if it knew she was watching. For a second, she thought she saw glowing red eyes staring directly into her soul. Terrified, Sophie switched her eyes back to the road. "It's not real. It's not real," she whispered, trying to convince herself. But the heavy feeling in her chest told her otherwise. Then, without warning, the figure disappeared. The footsteps stopped. The rearview mirror showed nothing but the empty road. Sophie let out a shaky breath, but deep inside she knew this was only the beginning. Something had noticed her. Something was following her. Sophie's car moved deeper into the dark road. The night air was heavy, and her body felt colder than before. She tried to shake off the memory of the shadow chasing her, but her mind refused to forget. Just as she thought things were getting calmer, the car suddenly jerked and stopped in the middle of the road. The engine died without warning. Sophie turned the key again and again, but the car refused to start. The silence was unbearable. She could hear her own heartbeat thumping in her ears. Then she saw it. A pale woman stood in front of her car, right in the middle of the road. She wore a long white dress that fluttered slightly in the cold wind. Her face was hidden by her long black hair, and her hands were trembling as she pointed directly at Sophie's window. Fear gripped Sophie's chest like an iron chain. She locked the doors quickly and tried to restart the engine. Nothing. Her hands shook as sweat rolled down her forehead. The woman did not move closer, but her presence was enough to fill Sophie with dread. Suddenly, the headlights flickered again, and for a moment Sophie thought she saw not one but 3 figures around her car. They were whispering, their voices low and broken, like wind passing through old ruins. Sophie covered her ears and screamed, "Go away!" But the whispers only grew louder. The pale woman lifted her head slightly, and Sophie caught a glimpse of her hollow, dark eyes staring straight into her soul. Desperate, Sophie pressed the car key again with all her strength. The engine coughed but refused to start. Her body trembled as she realized she might be trapped forever in this cursed road. In that terrifying moment, Sophie prayed harder than she ever had before. Sophie sat frozen in her car, her hands tight on the steering wheel. The pale woman outside had vanished, but the air still felt heavy, as if something invisible was pressing down on her chest. She closed her eyes for a second, trying to calm herself. When she opened them, the road looked different. All around her, the ground was covered with bodies. Dozens of lifeless people lay across the road, their faces pale, their eyes wide open, staring into nothing. Some were dressed in old clothes, torn and blood-stained, while others looked freshly dead. Sophie's breath caught in her throat. Her trembling fingers covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Slowly, she blinked, and in an instant, the bodies disappeared. The road was empty again. Her mind spun in confusion. Was it real? Or just her imagination? Before she could think further, a soft whisper echoed through the car. It was her name. Sophie. The voice was low, broken, almost like a hiss. She turned her head quickly, but no one was inside. The whisper came again, louder this time. Sophie. It felt as if someone was sitting right next to her. Her skin crawled, and goosebumps covered her arms. She gripped the steering wheel tighter and closed her eyes, praying it would stop. But when she opened them again, she nearly fainted. In the reflection of the windshield, she saw a dark figure sitting in the passenger seat, smiling with sharp, crooked teeth. She screamed and turned her head, but the seat was empty. Her whole body trembled as she realized she was trapped in illusions, unable to tell what was real and what was not. The death road was playing tricks on her mind, and the night had only just begun. Sophie's body was trembling, and her eyes were wide with terror. The horrifying illusions of dead bodies, the whispers, and the dark figure had almost broken her courage. She knew if she stayed longer on this cursed road, she might lose her mind completely. She wiped her tears with shaking hands and whispered to herself, "I must escape. I can't give up now." Gathering her strength, Sophie closed her eyes and prayed. She prayed for her life, for her family, and for the courage to survive this nightmare. Her hands reached once more for the car key. She turned it slowly, fearing disappointment, but this time, the engine roared back to life. Her heart leapt with hope. Without wasting a single second, she pressed the accelerator. The car sped forward, its headlights cutting through the darkness like swords. The trees on both sides seemed to stretch and twist, trying to block her way. She ignored everything and kept her eyes fixed on the road. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, calling her name again and again. She could see shadows running beside her car, their faces pressed against the windows, but she refused to look. Her only thought was survival. Suddenly, the pale woman appeared in front of her car again. Sophie gasped but didn't stop. With tears streaming down her face, she pressed harder on the accelerator. The car passed through the figure like smoke. For a moment, her whole body froze, expecting the car to crash, but nothing happened. Her heart was beating so fast it hurt. The road seemed endless, but after what felt like hours, Sophie saw a faint orange glow ahead. The sky was changing. Dawn was near. The cursed night was finally losing its grip. Sophie whispered, "Please, just a little more, just a little more." At last, Sophie drove out of the cursed road. The sun had begun to rise, painting the sky with soft orange and pink colors. Birds were singing in the distance, and the world finally looked alive again. But Sophie could not feel peace. Her body was weak, her eyes were swollen from tears, and her mind was still trapped in the horrors of the night. When she entered the city, people were shocked to see her car. They gathered around, whispering in disbelief. An old man stepped forward and asked, How are you alive? No one has ever returned from the death road after dark." His voice trembled as if he had seen a ghost. Sophie got out of the car, her legs shaking. She wanted to explain, but her words stuck in her throat. How could she tell them about the shadows, the whispers, the pale woman, and the illusions of dead bodies? No one would believe her. She only shook her head and said softly, "I don't know. I just survived." The crowd looked at her with wide eyes. Some saw her survival as a miracle, while others whispered that maybe the curse had chosen her for a reason. Sophie herself did not understand why she was spared. She could still feel invisible eyes watching her, as if the road had let her go but not completely. That night, when Sophie tried to sleep, the silence of her room was broken by a faint whisper. It was the same voice from the road, calling her name, Sophie. Her eyes flew open in terror. The nightmare was not over. Maybe the death road had not finished with her yet. Maybe she had brought something back with her. And deep in her heart, Sophie knew, her survival was not an ending, but the beginning of a darker mystery. And this was the story of Sophie, the only girl who survived the death road. Many entered, but none ever came back, except her. But survival is not always freedom. Sometimes, the shadows you escape from the road can follow you home. The moral of the story is simple. Not every path is meant to be taken, and some roads hold secrets darker than death itself. Courage can save you, but destiny decides the final result. Now I want to ask you, have you ever experienced something strange while traveling at night? Something that felt unnatural, like Sophie's journey? Share your story in the comments. I would love to read it. If you liked this English horror story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon for more scary tales every week. Because remember, the next story might be yours.